My name's Barri Coen. I've been working with small businesses and startups for over 10 years now, and in digital marketing generally for almost 20 years, showing my age there. Previously, I worked for a few big corporates, kind of more in the entertainment and online in the video space, Universal Music and DAZN. DAZN, if you're not familiar with them, are kind of the Netflix for sports. They're not so familiar to people in the UK, but they're very big internationally. I'm now the director of a growth marketing collective, which is a freelance collective of channel specialists, and we work exclusively with small businesses and startups. And my particular specialism is developing marketing functions from scratch, and working with those small businesses to drive growth over the long term as their outsourced kind of head of marketing or CMO. But equally, we have lots of channel specialists, so we work with plenty of businesses kind of in a more limited way, just managing certain channels. And you can see some of the businesses that I've either worked with full-time or on a freelance basis at the bottom. What we're going to go through today is, the first part of this presentation is about your digital presence and marketing. Obviously, we're conscious that businesses taking part in this call are differing ranges and different life scales of their business. So some of you may have all of your digital assets and marketing in place, you've tried things or not, and others may be just starting out. So obviously we've tried to take everyone into account with this presentation. But then we also want to expand the conversation beyond just digital marketing, kind of traditional digital marketing. We're going to start talking about what we term growth marketing, which is, I'll go into more detail further on. And then after that, we'll be giving you the tools, the knowledge to build a framework for growth. So this is not just kind of top of funnel at acquiring new customers. This is right through the user journey and looking at all of your metrics and your business as a whole to grow, particularly now with these challenging times and of lockdown. And then a bit more detail and some actions on actually setting yourselves up for growth. So in terms of your digital presence, as I said before, some of you will be set up quite nicely, others are just starting out. It depends kind of what stage of business you're at, what you were doing before lockdown, whether you've managed to, some of you of course have managed to put these things into place during lockdown to make things work for your business. But certainly there's always, regardless of which stage you're at, there's always improvements that we can make. We can always make sure that we have all of our present sorted. I mean, fundamentally, digital marketing is about building brand awareness and acquisition, but digital presence is where you capture any demand. This is all about your inbound. This is where people are coming in and where you capture and convert people. So whether you're app or web-based, you obviously need a website or app. There are plenty of businesses out there that can make do without those, so that's not specifically critical. But if you don't have those, then you certainly need to be visible on social media. You need to have somewhere for your customers to find you. And then certain types of businesses, particularly bricks and mortar, retail or catering, then you may find it equally as valuable to be on booking platforms and directories. So the quite a critical step in your digital marketing process, your evolution, is your audience. Obviously there are plenty of businesses out there that have a very wide audience, but there's always going to be kind of your middle ground, the people that are most likely to use your product, your service, or enter your store. So the first step within any digital marketing process should really be about your audience, your customers. And even if they're not your current customers, who would you prefer to be your customer? Who do you want to target? So who are they? Where are they? What do they do? What's their income level? What motivates them? And that's kind of esoteric as well as quite tangible motivations. How do they go about finding information? How will they discover your business? What platforms do they use? Who do they listen to for reviews and recommendations? plenty of people, depending on their age, their background, their demographic, will have different way that they prefer to communicate. Some may prefer to communicate on the phone. Others may want to always visit in person. Others will only ever communicate with you digitally. And then what might stop them from using your services? Are there any critical friction points that you need to address and identify when you're looking at who your audience actually are? I've included an image here of what we call an audience persona, but fundamentally you don't really need to create something pretty like this. You need to create an idea in your mind and something that you can communicate effectively with the other members of your team to have a clear idea of who you're targeting. And this becomes particularly important, obviously, if you're working with agencies or freelancers or you're hiring new people, to be able to communicate this information clearly, quickly, effectively. And in terms of your marketing strategy as a whole, it's very important. I mean, I think a lot of people think when we talk about digital marketing as being advertising, but the reality is we're also, and this is probably a bigger part of the puzzle, is we're thinking about inbound marketing. And inbound is where is your platform, whether that's your website, whether that's your app or your social media channels. This is about where you're capturing your visitors, the interest, the demand. And that's where you're going to convert them. And the key kind of areas for inbound marketing are your website and your apps, of course, but also search, social media, and content. You need to give customers or potential customers the tools to be able to discover you, of course, but also to pull them into your funnel. So it's less reliance on outbound advertising, push messaging, although that's definitely a significant part of the puzzle, but you really need to think about your message, how you're trying to engage them, attract them, and delight them. I mean, we're all looking for that aha moment with our customers, whether that's a real world experience in a bricks and mortar premise or whether that's online. The message needs to be able to meet their needs, tell them the benefits, and convert them again. The next step is to define your objectives. So what does success look like? What numbers can you measure, whether that's number of customers through the door, whether that's number of visitors to your website, leads, whether it's based on revenue. I would recommend having metrics aside from just revenue, so you have something to base it on. But think about how you're going to measure your success. And do you have the tools to measure it? So does your website and app have the right tracking and analytics in place? Are you able to measure the number of people coming into your premises? Are you able to track effectively both the number of leads that are coming through and where they came from? So really it's about defining your key objectives and then ensuring you're starting essentially from the end, what do you want to achieve, and then you can work from the other end, from the front, and figure out how you're going to achieve that. So now I want to talk a bit more about growth marketing. Obviously this session is all about how to get back to business, but I want to expand a bit beyond just traditional marketing, looking after the top couple of layers of the user journey, and actually think about growth as a whole for the business in marketing terms. I mean, fundamentally, we all want to grow. The whole nature of whether we're starting from where we were back in March or we're starting from a lower level, the whole point of this session is to help you grow as a business. And growth marketing is a kind of a newer definition that we use within digital marketing to highlight a different mindset. So this section here is all about growth marketing, what it is and how you can use it. So fundamentally, growth marketing is more expansive than traditional marketing. As I said before, traditional marketing tends to focus on just a couple of layers at the top of your funnel where those new customers are coming from. And then it also kind of a pretty fundamental aspect of growth marketing. It's not just part of the marketing team's remit, whether you have an individual whose responsibility is for marketing, whether you're relying on third parties or whether you have no one in the business for marketing specifically. It needs to be collaborative, regardless of what their job title is. And really growth marketing kind of represents using data hence why I was talking earlier about how important it is to be able to measure what you're doing. Using data to drive your decision making, but still trying to be creative and innovative at the same time. And fundamentally, we're still focused on acquiring new customers, retaining your existing ones, because retention is king, and increasing profit. So which should be the goal for you and any other business, regardless of how lockdown has affected you. So this is an illustration of what I talked about just a second ago, with the top two layers being the focus of traditional marketing versus growth being focused on all of the levels of the funnel. So really, the advent of the term growth marketing, or the mindset of growth marketing, was marked a change in the way marketing felt or dealt with their challenges. So traditional marketing focuses more on creating awareness and acquiring new customers, whereas growth marketing is all about those two layers as well, but also about activating those customers, keeping those customers, increasing your revenue, and making sure that they become brand advocates down at the referral stage and feed to the top of the funnel again with new customers. So this is, I don't think we have, looking at the list of attendees there, I don't know if we've got any subscription-based businesses, but subscription-based businesses are particularly relevant here just because they measure the number of customers they lose per month. With many businesses, that's kind of hard thing to put a metric behind, but this was a really great illustration, so I've used it here despite knowing that there weren't too many subscription businesses involved. And every business has what we call a churn rate, which is the number of customers that won't use you again month on month and year on year. But subscription businesses tend to measure this. So according to Recurly research, Recurly are a company who deal with subscription payments for hundreds of thousands of subscription businesses. An average between B2B and B2C businesses of 5.6% of customers are lost per month, which sounds relatively low. I think most businesses would, on the face of it, be quite happy only losing 5.6%. But what that actually means is if they want to continue keeping the same revenue, assuming the average revenue stays the same, they would have to actually gain 50% of their total customers again, just to maintain that revenue. So it's quite critical that we think about this type of number, and this is a really good illustration of how we use data to manage our decision making. We think about data in terms of driving our decisions and our strategies going forward. Every business loses customers, but we need to try and measure that and take that into account when we're doing our marketing. Mike Volpe used to be the CMO of HubSpot. He was there for a number of years. And he said, growth marketing is removing the boundaries of marketing to enable every aspect of the customer experience to focus on attracting more engaged customers. So it's about engagement. It's about delighting those customers. It's about converting them. It's about making sure that you can identify not just the people that are making that first purchase, but who's most likely to spend the most money, who's most likely to return again and again, who's most likely to become an advocate, to promote your business to other customers. It's all about the full funnel. Sean Ellis is kind of a big deal in the world of growth marketing because he was first at Dropbox, who kind of created a lot of some of the best practices of marketing as a whole, let alone growth marketing, and now is the founder and CEO of growthhackers.com, which is a fantastic website, which I would urge you to check out if you have time. He said, for meaningful growth, businesses must completely change the rules of traditional channels and innovate outside of those channels. They need to be creative and they need to relentlessly test new ideas. And if they don't, they'll go out of business, which is pretty key to kind of the type of business that I'm used to working with. And I suspect a few businesses that are on this call. You're small, you can't compete with the big players. You can't go out there and compete if you're on the B2B side dealing with the likes of HubSpot or the big IT firms or the big accountancy firms. If you're on the B2C side trying to target consumers, you can't compete with Costa and Starbucks. You need to think creatively. You need to think outside of the box. And this is the challenge where growth marketing stemmed from, essentially. So it's about trying to find innovative ideas and testing them quickly to either learn or fail and move on. Having a growth mindset means fundamentally not doing anything just because that's the way it's always been done, whether it's sector specific or whether it's within your business specifically. One of the things I personally hate the most when I'm working with businesses is being told that we can't do something because that's not the way it's done. I think the growth mindset fundamentally means that we need to step away from that situation. There definitely will be situations where things have been tried over and over and they've been tried effectively and we should move on. That's part of growth marketing too. But if things are not being tried, or things are assumed because that's the way they've always been done, then fundamentally there needs to be a shift away from that attitude in order to kind of fully meet the goals of growing your business. It means being fearlessly creative and measuring everything. There is nothing wrong with failing in growth marketing or digital marketing as a whole, and I'm sure any business owner can understand that failure is unless it means losing money, is never necessarily a bad thing, so long as you're always learning, and never giving up, never when something is working, never assuming that that's the best it can get, always looking to optimize and scale and grow those channels, even if things are ticking along nicely. So building a framework for growth, there are kind of 5 key steps here within this process. We'll go through each of them, so I won't go through them all here, but the first one is identify your top channels, even if you're just starting out and they don't exist yet. So this is the bullseye methodology, this image here on the right. Fundamentally, we want to be able to identify the channels, the ways that we're creating awareness and demand for our business that are working right now, or the ones where most of our customers are coming from, even if they're not profitable. So it could be that you're just starting out and you have no idea what these channels are. You just have an idea of what you feel are the most offer the most opportunity. But this process, and it doesn't take long, it takes like 10 minutes, just allows you time to reflect and identify your core channels. So in the middle, you'll have your 3 or 4 key channels. And then outside in the blue area, you'll have the channels that you perhaps haven't tried at all, or that are working to some extent and you want to optimize. And this will provide the focus for your growth strategy going forward. This will allow you to allocate your time and your energy and your budget more effectively as part of your marketing strategy. So number 2, identify your weaknesses, which is pretty key. The key to this is identifying where do you think you're losing customers? Where do you think you're losing people? The most common ones, the most common bottlenecks are the top of the funnel and the conversion point. So typically it will be about messaging and targeting and how you're actually attracting customers at that awareness stage. Many businesses also have an issue with the consideration stage, how you're stating what you do and how you're going to benefit your customers, but that's less of a common bottleneck. And the other stage is a conversion. That's kind of the critical and most common bottleneck that many businesses have, is how we're actually converting, whether that's a lead, whether that's a booking or an actual e-commerce conversion, a sale. The conversion is critical, and that could come down to your message, it could come down to your process, how you're driving people through those stages, or it could even just be a technical issue. It could be that you don't have PayPal and that your customers demand PayPal and are more likely, or it could be that you only take certain card payments. There are many technical issues that could come into play with affecting conversion issues aside from your content, your website or your platform. So the top of the funnel is essentially how you're attracting them in the first place, how you're creating awareness for your business. It doesn't have to be, this typically isn't on your owned platforms, your website, your apps, your social channels. It's kind of further up the funnel than that. Is your message on point? Are you attracting the right audience? Are you talking to the right audience? Are you stating your USPs, your benefits effectively? That's kind of all part of the top of the funnel. Then we've got the middle of the funnel, which is the consideration phase. So that's where building that relationship and nurturing them before they're likely to convert is critical. So this is the content on your website or your social media. This is how you're communicating with them when they're asking questions. Are there FAQs? Is there how it works section on your website? Are you engaging with people on social media? Are you allowing the right options to ask you questions or come up with issues? This is that consideration phase. This is the point where they're aware of you and now they're just deciding whether you're the right solution for them. Then the bottom of the funnel, which is the conversion point. This is obviously the most important stage in the sense of it being the critical point where you drive revenue or drive conversions, but there are obviously there's some important stages above. And really, this is just as important as positioning and message. This is, and as I said before, this can be as much about message as it is about how you're technically trying to convert them and whether you're able to track them. And then this stage actually is often neglected, too often neglected. Post-sale, so whether this is post-lead, post-booking, post-sale, whatever your business does, whether this is post-visit, if they're coming into a bricks and mortar store. How are you following up? Are you sending them a quick email to say thank you? Are you making sure they know exactly what you do and how to use you to best effect? Are you onboarding them effectively? Whether that's email, whether that's verbally, whether that's via your app or SMS messages or social media. How are you driving loyalty and engagement after they've made that initial conversion? And then stage 3 is ideation. So this is, how we now have a list of weaknesses, but how do we turn those into opportunities? What do we need to address to reduce those friction points in our funnel? And what ideas do we have to move beyond those and actually potentially turn those on their head and into opportunities? It's important to include members from across the business because clearly there are going to be points within the user journey through that funnel that isn't just a marketing responsibility. It's going to fall down to your technical or development teams. It's going to fall to your customer service people, the people on your front desk. It's going to be kind of across the business. So I would urge, if you're going to have a brainstorming session, to have a joint effort across the business as a whole and treat all weaknesses equally. So don't prioritize at this stage. It's important at this point to give every weakness its own time. And you may find that some of those are very easy wins and that can be fixed very quickly, despite more important issues, more critical issues as you see them at this stage, having a more longer term effect. So now we have our list of ideas, it's time to prioritize and plan for those. So I will often use an impact versus effort template. So I will put all of the ideas that we put together, all of our weaknesses that we've addressed and we think we have potential solutions that we want to test or fix, put them into a list, and then we'll score them out of 5 based on how much effort or cost it's going to cost us, and what the potential impact on the business is. And that gives you a really simple, easy way of essentially prioritizing. So now you can prioritize based on a combined score between efforts and impact. And that's where you'll find that some of those ideas that you might have ordinarily deprioritized because they're not deemed to be quite as important could be super easy wins and actually could potentially score higher because you can make them happen quicker and will have a marginal effect on your numbers. And then we have the final stage, stage 5, execute, test and repeat. So there are 2 ways to prioritize. Fundamentally, it depends on what stage your business is at. Startups will tend to choose the highest impact with the least amount of effort, because cost is key. I suspect there's going to be plenty of businesses that wouldn't deem themselves as startups, but would still quite like to keep their costs down. So that may be an approach that you want to take regardless of how long you've been in business. But then more established businesses will typically focus on the ones that will bring in the highest potential gains, and be the quickest to implement. Growth marketing is all about high velocity, high tempo testing. So it's important to remember at this stage and the stage before that an idea or a potential fix for a problem doesn't have to be perfect. You need a minimum viable solution for you to test whether it's going to work. And then you can dedicate more time and more money typically to making that effective in the longer term if it's deemed to be working. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just important to get things live as quickly as possible within reason and test them quickly. So now we've established that digital marketing and marketing as a whole isn't just about that top end of the funnel, the acquisition. We talk about the 40-40-20 rule. So it's hard to kind of, as I know, running a business, it's hard to sort of define how much effort you should really spend on any given area. This isn't about budget, by the way, this is just about time and energy. So the 40-40-20 rule in terms of digital marketing, growth marketing, defines that 40% of your efforts should remain on feeding the funnel, should be focused on awareness and acquisition. 40% should be spent on addressing those friction points, dealing with those weaknesses, fixing the problems, the bottlenecks. And then the remaining 20% should be spent on new ideas, new channels, things that are completely experimental, those channels, those platforms, those ideas that you've had that you've not had time to do. This 20% will allow you the space, the headspace, and potentially the budget to be able to do that. So it's an easy, simple way of thinking about how to split your resource in order to make sure that you're tackling every problem. And in terms of budget, it's slightly different breaking point, but I'd say at least 50 to 60% of your budget should be focused on your core bullseye channels, those 3 or 4 channels that you know have been working or almost working and are kind of critical for you to gain new customers and feed the top of the funnel. And the rest, the other 40 to 50% should be spent on the other points. And obviously that's on the basis that budget also needs to be spent on developing new ideas too. People. So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's not just about marketing. Growth marketing, because it's looking at every touch point in the business, deals with customer service, operations, production, accounting, logistics, as well as marketing. Essentially, anyone that has any kind of touch point, whether physical or indirect, with your customers should have a say and should be involved in the growth marketing process. And this will help to kind of bring focus for the business as a whole, but it will gain you better results too. Setting up for growth. So here are the key assets that you need, and this applies to however you're going to define marketing, but this kind of applies to everything. Fundamentally, you need everything in place, or at least as much the critical elements in place to get started. You need your website or your app. You need your social media channels, and I'm not suggesting. I think very few businesses, unless they've got to a certain stage, will have all social media channels up and running and as active as each other. You need to pick the most important one. Where are you? And this is where your audience personas can come into play. Where are your audience? Which are the channels they're most likely to be on and engage with you on? Depending on the type of business you are, you'll want to be potentially in directories and local listings. This is particularly relevant for local businesses with bricks and mortar stores. Go Google My Business is fundamental to making sure that you appear in local search. You want to have digital assets. So when you're refining your website, optimizing your emails, when you're posting things on social media, have a stack of emails, of imagery and video that you can use. Use stock imagery sites. There are plenty of free ones. Have a think about how how you want your brand to be perceived, and choose imagery and video on that basis. And of course, you'll need to build emails if you're going down that route of onboarding and engaging with your customers before and after sale. And although we're only talking about digital and digital marketing here, printed materials are just as much a part of growth marketing as any other channel. For many businesses, offline flyering, posters, out of home, menus, all of that is part and parcel of the marketing piece. So of course needs to be taken into account at this stage. And if offline is an important part of your business, then you should absolutely keep doing that. And then this is important. This is probably the where I spend the most time, and at least initially, dealing with new businesses that I work with. It's making sure that all of the tools are in place to be able to make everything work. So clearly the most critical element is analytics and monitoring. Do you have the means to measure what you're doing, whether it's working or not, and to be able to access that information effectively? On a simple level, this could just be adding Google Analytics to your website or your apps. But there's also monitoring tools like Brands24, Brand Watch, Mention, where you can keep an eye on who's talking about your business outside of your own channels, which can be really useful here. Then we've got engagement and relationship building tools. So these tools will help you with communicating with your customers effectively. You can make them as personal or as professional as you like. And these could be chat tools, these could be email tools, and a couple of key players here are Intercom and Lead Chat. Then we've got social tools, whether that's for for managing social media and posting and analytics. And you've got tools like Buffer and Hootsuite, NarrowQ. It's not just about posting, but also finding good content to post. Some of these tools can make it really easy if you don't have much time to manage your social media channels to find that content quickly and post it quickly. Then you've got funnel optimization. So this is possibly an area where many businesses don't really think about, but it's it's pretty key to growth marketing. So this will help you identify and eliminate problems, but also the test. This allows you to create A/B testing. This allows you to change the color of a button or change the message at the top of your website, but compare it to the original. Because it's one thing, if you just change something over based on assumptions, you'll never know really whether it's because of the change that you're getting better or worse results. So you need to test them side by side so that all factors are taken into account. There could be seasonal changes, there could be differences in the way that you're doing your marketing, it could be the channels that you're using that given week or month. So A/B testing allows you a fair comparison. And there are tools like Optimizely and Google Optimize. Google Optimize is free, by the way, that will help you create those tests on your website and apps. And then we've got customer onboarding. So this is kind of key for that post-sale stage, but also prior to conversion. So obviously the key goal for growth marketing isn't just about acquiring customers, it's also about increasing their value. It's about finding the best value customers, the ones that are most likely to love what you do and how you do it. So customer onboarding is key to make sure that they have the tools and the information to understand what you do and how best to use you or take advantage of your service. And there are tools, obviously there are simple email tools like MailChimp, but there are tutorial tools that you can use on your website, apps, and elsewhere like Helpia that will create kind of those interactive tutorials that you find often on websites to help you find where things are